Turn, O virgin daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's House of Joseph. Reunion Roadmap is a B'nai Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.
Well, welcome back to Reunion Roadmap. This is Al McCarn, Executive Director of B'nai Yosef North America, and I'm here with our Communications Director, Zefania Pappas. Zefania, welcome home from Israel.
It's nice to be home, but maybe it's because my heart is still there that I'm having trouble adjusting to the diaspora.
Well, yes, this I understand, having been there a few times myself and looking forward to going back to Israel in the future, hopefully in the near future. Now, as we are recording this, it is the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence. So this is Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day. And we have a fitting program here for Israel's 70th anniversary. And I would characterize this program around the title of the Midrash our elders will be doing later, Why Stand with Israel? They cover that in some very good detail. That's Barry Phillips and David Jones. So that will be coming in the second half of the program. But in the first half of the program, we have a very special conversation with someone you met in Jerusalem. Why don't you tell us about her?
Yeah, first of all, what wasn't mentioned in the interview, and she would like to have mentioned, is that they believe that they're from the tribe of Dan. But she kind of, you'll hear in the interview, she described herself as a mixed bowl of soup, many different flavors, African descent, different things mixed in. And her name's Naomi, and she has just an awesome story about how she was living in Israel for a while and some of the events that took her outside of Israel. And she is always, her heart is heavy always that went being away from the land.
Yes. Now, the special thing about this interview, and I'm going to ask you in a minute to explain how you met Naomi, we think of Israelis probably through our Western lens, and we think of Israelis like European and American Jews. But wait, that is the most multinational community I've ever encountered.
Yes.
Because not only are there Jewish Israelis, there are Arab and Aramean and Druze Israelis. And the Jewish Israelis who have come from as far away as Ethiopia and India and China and all over the world. Now, Naomi's story, it's going to blow your mind, folks. Listen carefully as she explains where she grew up. You'll be surprised. And not only does she have African background, but Chinese.
Chinese, yes.
And was there Russian also?
I think there's something like that in there as well.
Yeah, and then to hear where she's living now and how often she gets back to Israel and why, it's an amazing story. But tell us, how did you and your wife Raina meet Naomi?
Well, when you're in the Abraham Hostel, there's a lot of different personalities and different people that you meet, and many times the Father will put somebody on your radar to say, "Hey, you need to go ahead and reach out to this person," And so what we did is we reached out to Naomi, and she had her niece there, and there was somebody else traveling with her as well. And as we got to know her, we thought, wow, Raina and I just decided this would be an amazing interview. We just know she has a story. And what really drew us is that there's a shop below the Abraham Hostel just off the street there. And we were there, and she was at the cashier, and we heard her speaking fluent Hebrew to the cashier, and we thought, this is a very interesting story. We need to interview her. This is very intriguing here, and finding out how that all transpired with her command of the language, and you'll find that out in the interview.
Now, she says she's of the tribe of Dan.
Yes.
And we have come to understand that the tribe of Dan was not part of the house of Judah. The tribe of Dan is part of the house of Ephraim. So you and I would consider Danites to be non-Jewish Hebrews or non-Jewish Israelites. Is that the way Naomi looks at herself?
Well, I mean, what happened is you'll see in the interview how she ended up becoming part of a community. And of course, having Ethiopian ancestry, you'll see the Ethiopians, even though they're considered Jews, there's some Ethiopians will say that they believe that they're from the tribe of Dan as well. I've heard of that. So
Right, right. And there's such a rich Hebraic heritage throughout the continent of Africa. That's something that I have enjoyed exploring, and I hope we will be able to explore more of it in time to come here on Reunion Roadmap.
yeah, in fact, Raina took some video when we were when the priestly blessing was going on at the Western Wall. There was a group of Ethiopians that came in, and they with their drums and singing and their enthusiasm that was going on, and it felt we were transported way back to ancient times. It was just quite an amazing piece of video footage that Raina was able to capture.
Well, we will talk some more about Naomi and your experience with her when we get to the other side of the program. But for now, let's go back to Jerusalem and meet your new friend.
Hello, this is Sophania Pappas. You're listening to the interview portion of Reunion Roadmap. I am the Communications Director for B'nai Yosef North America. And we have a guest with us today who has a very interesting story. Her name is Naomi. And introduce yourself to our listeners, Naomi.
So Naomi is a name that I never liked. I wanted to be called Judith because Judith in Hebrew means a gibora, somebody who fights. And I fought all the time growing up as a child. I only had brothers, so I had to fight all the time. And my father said, no, I'm not changing your name. Naomi is your name. You will learn to live with it. And one day you will learn to appreciate the name.
Now, your journey is quite interesting with your family. And could you go into details about that?
Okay, so my family is what we call the soup family. Soup meaning that it's such a mix-up it's a melee of everything you can possibly think of. My father is mixed race, Irish and African. African from is African and Chinese. And her father, her grandfather was Hong Kong Chinese, and her grandmother is Ethiopian Jewess.
Very interesting. And now you, for a time, were in Guyana, South America. Could you share with us about that experience and what it was like living there and being a Torah-keeping community?
So we were struggling to keep, my grandmother, my great-grandmother is Cushite, and she's from the tribe of Dan as far as we know. And she used to complain to my great-grandfather, who was Hong Kong Chinese, and used to eat pork. And she made him swear that he must stop eating pork, otherwise she would not be a good wife to him. And he decided to stop eating pork, and he embraced her faith to a degree. He was tolerant of her because he wanted fresh food every day, and she would, on a Friday, turn the big pot over, or we would call a coal pot. She would turn it over, no cooking, no fire lighting on Friday sunset to Saturday night sunset. And so there was a frequent discrepancies in the household because he wanted hot food and she wasn't having no hot food. Anyway, later on, when she tried to, introduce her faith into the community, to go from where we lived to where she can worship, people knew she was going to worship and they used to stone her. And so the whole family moved away from Georgetown, the capital of Guyana, and went to live in a place, all the houses are on stilts. And there she felt safe because there was a practicing Jewish community there from different backgrounds. Some were Portuguese Jews, and some were Lebanese Jews, Syrian Jews. This is all in Guyana.
Interesting.
And so the life went from there. And when my mom was born, they took her back to town for school. And then mommy, as she grew up, she met my father, who was a Catholic. And of course, that was not going to work. So my father had to accept my mom's way of faith. Yes. Otherwise, they couldn't be married. And so he was taught that he can't be with her when she's having her flowers.
Mm.
And he agreed and married her.
Okay.
And then once he married her, he went back to his Catholic church.
Interesting.
And my mom obviously didn't. So the family was in a lot of problems.
Wow.
My father started to keep Sabbath in the interim just to get to marry my mom. He's going to church, going to a shul on Shabbat.
Yeah.
And decided that he would continue searching about this Shabbat. And he went to his priest in the Catholic Church and asked him about the Shabbat. And the priest said, yes, but we don't go by the Bible. We have our own Bible, which is the Catechism. And he said, who wrote the Catechism? And the priest said, now let me look. The priest didn't even know who wrote the Catechism. So when my father did the investigation, he realized that the Sabbath was the right day to keep.
Interesting.
Now, in the community, this is going back in the 1950s, early
Okay.
40s, 50s, just after the war.
Okay.
And my mom said that a letter came from the Israeli government saying that if we could put 40 families together, we could return to Israel. So it was a great opportunity for us to travel from Guyana back to Israel.
Yeah.
And we all wanted to go. My dad said everybody wanted to go, but nobody could afford the passage. So the community put together and sent one family, and they were of Portuguese origin. They came to Israel, and they gave them a house with land in a village that we had agreed with the Israeli government, and it's called Amirim. Amirim means tender twig or tender branch, and we call ourselves branches. And so that name was perfect.
Yeah.
And we were vegetarians, and so it
Okay.
was meant to be a vegetarian and a fruitarian village.
Okay.
And so off this family went, and the rest of us was left with the dilemma, how are we going to raise the money? So my father then decided to come to England and work. It took him 10 years to work, and eventually we got enough money to come by boat, my mom, my dad, to Israel. Landed in Haifa in 1968 and stayed in a house.
Okay.
By that time we had accepted Yeshua
Okay.
within the 10-year period.
Okay.
And so we started to worship with the Seventh-day Adventists because they were the only Sabbath-keeping people.
Okay. Sure.
But we would still keep the feasts
Yes.
at home
Okay.
because there was no other community that would accept us.
Interesting.
So when we came to Israel, we thought we would have that freedom, but we soon realized that they didn't want us very hard. And we weren't allowed to work. They used to arrest my dad every single month and take him to court.
Mm.
And the judge would say, Mr. Patrick, are you still here? And my dad said, I'm not going anywhere, and my family's staying. And he said, okay, 30 shek, those days was lira, 30 lira. Pay the 30 lira and I'll see you next month. Okay. And the police used to come and say, Fitz, we come for you this month. Every month they used to come for him.
Mm.
And then what really kicked in was while we left Israel in the end was I was coming up to the age where they wanted me to go into Sabah,
Okay.
the army.
The army.
And my father said, yes, she can go in the army as long as she doesn't hold a gun. They said, what are you talking about? Of course she has to hold a gun. Everybody holds a gun. Man, woman, child, everybody holds a gun. And my dad said, no, I'm not giving life and I'm not taking life, and my daughter's not doing it either. Put her in the nurse in the hospital to work. They said, no, she has to hold a gun. He said, we're coming for her in the morning to enlist her. My father got me out of the village, down to Tel Aviv, waited for the British Embassy to open, and put me on the first plane back to London.
Mm. Now, what did you feel about, were you ready to serve in the IDF?
Yeah, I was willing to serve. I would have been ready to serve because when I was going to school, we were the first pupils to open a school in Carmiel. And after the school got so full with Olim Hadashim,
Yes.
it got too full. And
Okay.
so we I had to move to a school in Miron.
Okay.
And that was a new school as well. But on the way to Miron, we had to pass a few Arab villages. And they used to throw stones at our buses.
Yeah.
And one day we were on the way to, I didn't know any better, but this is what happened. We were on our way to a Tioul in Tel Hai.
Okay.
And there's 3 minibuses with children. And they blew up the last minibus with the children in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a bazooka, you know? It was
That's right.
a gun with 2.
Yeah, right.
And all my friends in that bus passed. Wow. So for me to be alive today, I'm already thinking.
So you were, because you were, like you said, you were like a warrior type of woman.
Yeah,
It was-
like fighting.
It was no problem for you.
Never.
It's just you wanted to be obedient to your father.
Listen,
Is that?
I would have a big competition with David, because when it come to slingshot, I was on the ball.
Yeah.
I could, from miles, I could see it, bing, and catch it. I was so good. And everybody, my whole family, they used to call me Cassius Clay's sister.
Okay.
My brother was Floyd Patterson.
Okay.
And my other brother, that's how it was, the whole
Yes.
family. So they knew not to touch us.
Okay.
Please, to my father, let your children look after our children in the minibus when they're going. Because they were vegetarians. They were a bit frail. Whereas we were just the total opposite.
Yeah.
Although we were vegetarians, we were strong, we were athletic.
Yes.
My brother won a silver medal for Israel sword fencing, and I won a silver medal for distance running.
Okay.
And it was an Ethiopian girl that beat me and got the first, the gold medal for Asia. We were running for Israel.
Wow. Beautiful story.
Yeah. So I defended Israel with my life.
Yes.
It's the only country I've ever lived there over 60 years.
Yes.
So, it's just not home.
Yeah, because I saw you in the shop, and we just saw you speaking such fluent Hebrew.
Yeah, I'm at home.
And this lady is at home.
Yeah.
And we saw both of us saw you there, and we were just saying, she has a story. She has a story.
Yeah.
So now, where you said 60 years now you've been in Great Britain right now, but you try to get here as often as you can because it's home, right?
The thing is that all our desire have some sort of connection on a permanent basis.
Yeah.
It fell through, and then we heard stories that you had to give up Yeshua to get a citizenship, and we didn't think the price was worth it.
Yes.
And one day God will work something out for us. But it's not at the price of Yeshua. Yes. So decided that we would wait and see what would become of things. Yeah. And we would just wait. The Lord is true to his word. He promised us that he would give us mansions. If not on earth, we'll get it in heaven. Either way, we're winning. So when we saw that was impossible, we said the instruction is to come up to Jerusalem 3 times a year. So from the 70s, we've been coming up every year 3 times.
Wow, beautiful.
And this year was particularly difficult because I lost my job in 2015. Okay. So I'm literally living on modern day miracles, on promises.
Okay.
No income.
Yes.
And so to get here, this year especially, 70 years of Israel's existence, I had to be here.
Yeah.
And because the airlines know that,
they
pushed up all the prices for direct flights. You couldn't get nothing under £700 from England for a trip.
Just a 4-hour trip?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And we have to come 3 times. So we come for Pesach and Shavuot and Sukkot. Yom Kippur. We come for Yom Kippur because Yom Kippur, you can't really celebrate it in Babylon.
Oh, yes.
You've got too much temptations.
Yes. Wow. This is quite the story. And so now we met your niece.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the next generation.
She's the next generation. And is she growing in this understanding of who she is?
And then my youngest brother, her father died suddenly. And I think since that happened, it kind of like has jerked her way of thinking, what am I doing? What is my purpose of my life? And suppose if I lost my life, would I be able to see my dad again? And so she came to me and she said, Auntie, I want to take teachings.
Wow.
And I'm the only one for this generation. And
Okay.
my mom was the only one for her generation. So when my mom passes, unless somebody comes with me, says where 2 or 3 are gathered,
Yes.
I'll be on my own. But now that she's coming, the 2's gone back.
Wow. So, don't know your identity
Yeah.
and who you are, you cannot know your destiny.
And that's her problem. She hasn't sat at my mother's table to
Yeah.
realize how important she is as an individual and the
Yes.
history of her. Because
Mm-hmm.
none of the family have really realized that we're actually royalty.
Mm-hmm.
We're children of the king. We're not
Yes.
ordinary people.
Yeah.
And once you realize that,
Mm.
you know, not that you're haughty,
Mm-hmm.
not
Yes.
that you're big-headed or
Right.
grandiose, none of
Yes.
those things.
Right.
But you just know your position in the world.
Mm.
That you're unequal with any king or any queen because the Lord has made you so.
Mm.
And he doesn't just,
Mm.
it's not a fluke that I am who I am.
Yes. Hallelujah.
With all the teachings of politics and physics and
Yes.
geography and whatever, when it comes to the teaching of the scriptures,
Mm-hmm.
that is where you get your true footing and your true foundation, and you can grow into a magnificent tree from
Yeah.
a mustard seed
Yes.
once you get the proper teaching.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Do you have any final words for our listeners?
I would say that this precious thing you call the breath of life, don't waste it watching TV. That thing of itself is sent from him.
Mm.
I won't even call his name. You know who I'm talking
Yes.
about.
Yes.
And because it's becoming more and more prevalent, sometimes hours goes by
Yes.
and you're seeping in all these negative statements and
Yeah.
polluted ideas and opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is unsanctioned by God. It's not
Yes.
sanctioned by God. It's us.
Yes.
And even some of them, is
Yeah.
to be desired. But
Right.
spend time with the Word. Spend time
Mm.
in the Word.
Mm.
They're such precious,
Yes.
priceless rubies
Mm.
to be found in the Word of God. And you never ever see the same scripture twice. If you go over the same scripture and go over it and go over it, every single time when you pray before you go into the scripture, the Lord will bring some new light out of it,
Wow.
some new fruit. And make that your daily diet.
Well, Naomi, this has absolutely been a pleasure. And we say Chag Sameach. We're here in Jerusalem
Okay.
during the feast day. It's just what a wonderful time
Pesach.
to be here for
Yeah.
Pesach and for Chag HaMatzot. So, signing off, this is Stefania Pappas, Communications Director for B'nai Yosef North America.
In honor of the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence, here now is the Israeli national anthem, Hatikva, as sung by Lenny and Varda on their album, The Hope of All Israel, available at lennyandvarda.com.
כל עוד בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומיה, ולפאתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה. עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון בירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון בירושלים.
Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Midrash portion of Reunion Roadmap. This is David Jones, and with me is fellow elder for B'nai Yosef North America, Barry Phillips. Shalom, Barry.
Hey, David. Good to be back with you.
You know, speaking of being back with us, you've recently been on an amazing trip, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that today, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. Well, you recently went home for the first time, right?
It's not for the first time. This was actually trip number 4 for me, but I had the privilege of spending about 15 days in the land of Israel.
Yeah. Sorry, Barry, I misspoke there, brother. I meant you saw things you hadn't seen before.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
yes. There, I was on a tour as well as a 3-day conference with the B'nai Yosef Congress, and the Congress had members. I counted about 8 different nations. Europe is well represented. Israel, Canada, U.S., and that was good. The highlight for me, not slamming the Congress at all, but the highlight for me was a tour that went as far south as Qumran Caves, Masada, Dead Sea, and then as far north as Tel Dan, up where the headwaters of the Don come through, where the altar that was in the north during the reign of Yeroboam was located. So got there up on the Golan. Of course, we spent a good bit of time in Jerusalem and the surrounding areas. But the highlight for me, David, was the mountains of Ephraim. This particular trip was able to see such places as Ariel, Shiloh, where the temple stood, or the tabernacle temple hybrid stood during the days of Shemuel the prophet. Was there for 369 years.
Which is longer than either of the temples stood, correct? I mean, the tabernacle itself stood longer than either of the temples, if I'm thinking correctly.
If I'm thinking correctly. There was, of course, during the days of Zerubbabel, the rebuilding and the return and the rebuilding of the temple. It stood in some form until it was remodeled under Herod. But that temple or tabernacle structure there at Shiloh was very significant. I'll make a quick point about that. Standing at Shiloh and looking at the ruins that were there, the rectangular plateau where the tabernacle temple structure would, and I keep saying that because it was a tabernacle, but it had wooden doors that were open. So they modified somehow the tabernacle of Moshe to some degree. So it was an interesting structure that was there, but it was in the land of Ephraim. Ephraim, especially under the priesthood leadership of Eli, Pinchas and Hophni, it became corrupt. They lost the sense of set apartness. The tabernacle became a benefiting system to the priesthood and really to no one else. And they abused their status. They abused those who brought offerings. They seduced women that were there to worship and to pray, and it turned into something else. And so that whole opportunity for Ephraim to house, to host, if you will, for the nation of Israel, the very presence of Elohim, of the Shekinah, was lost and ultimately relocated to Jerusalem. And there's no need to throw jealous stones at Jerusalem. Ephraim had that opportunity and abused it.
Hey, Barry, that kind of makes me think a little bit about some of the things that are happening today. we, for the most part, have really lost our reverence for Elohim and His Word. Now, thankfully, I think there's an awakening, if you want to put it that way, or a renewal, or a revival, or calling back, however you want to state it, that the Word of Yah is being renewed to people, and His Spirit is calling out and calling us back to Him. But we're also fighting a real lack of respect for the Most High in our midst, especially here in America. And, when we say we love Israel, I get a lot of people that say, why? And if you take beside the fact, like in Psalm 122, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, may they be secure who love you. Well, Sha'alu, it's not necessarily pray, it means to ask or to request. And in my mind, and again, this is just a food for thought, in my mind, we're praying for the peace in Jerusalem, but we're never truly going to have peace in Jerusalem until the Prince of Peace comes and restores it, puts it there.
And that's the way that I see that command to pray for He who is Sar Shalom to come to Jerusalem. It's not just that we are praying for the tranquility and sense of calm and well-ordered structure for the city, but rather that He who is the wholeness, when we say shalom, it's more than those things. It's wholeness and completeness. It is right and proper function that brings the whole of a matter together. And so there is one who does that. When we're praying for the peace or the shalom of Yerushalayim, in my mind, we're asking, Father, send Sar Shalom, the Prince of Shalom, Yeshua, to your city and bring right governmental structure that brings wholeness to that place.
That's a very good way to put it, But again, we're talking about when we say we love Israel or Jerusalem or the Jewish people and all this, and we get the responses like, why? It saddens my heart. It breaks my heart because we see how people truly don't understand the scriptures and how we're told. I mean, people will say like Romans 11, well, we're grafted in. Okay, grafted into what? Ephesians chapter 2, you used to be Gentiles and separated from the commonwealth of Israel and separated from the covenants that it had promise and all that, but now you've been brought near to what? It's we have this idea of well, that's Israel over there, but we're not in Israel, so what relevance does it have to me? And I think we're starting to see some people waking up and saying, not only do I love Israel, but I am supposed to be and function as a part of Israel.
There is sadly this animosity, jealousy. We see in the scriptures that Ephraim or the house of Israel should be provoking our brother Yehuda to jealousy. Well, it's the opposite way around in a lot of respects. So much so that I've heard of incidents. I thankfully haven't seen this, where people would intentionally, in praying or stating the Shema, would turn their back on Jerusalem out of angst or animosity or even anti-Semitism. I don't ask me to explain such a mindset. I don't know that I could. I don't know that I could even try. You're right. There are those, especially here in America, David, that would say, why all the concern for Israel? We're not in Israel. We live here. Here's my question. Are you a captive or an exile?
Oh, that's a good question.
Are you, the way to answer that question is, do you see your children or grandchildren as only continuing in the lifestyle or society or location that you are currently in? Or do you have a hope and ambition, a drive to see them come to the kingdom and be restored back home to the land? If you are looking for the restoration, you're in exile. If not, then you are a captive who only will see your future generations as Americans.
Hmm.
So
But we don't know that we have a connection to the land.
that's our problem. We don't properly connect with the land. I don't know. Maybe I was ruined on my first trip, David. When Laura and I stepped off the plane and put our feet on the ground, something in that ground reached up and grabbed our hearts and has never let go. So I was smitten, and it was not just with the mystique or the uniqueness of the land. It wasn't just a mindset. I mean, I was a wreck. I walked through that place for 10 days in year 2000 and wept everywhere I went. Just a week or two ago, I was standing back in the land and again felt this vital connection that the very soil and essence of that land was reaching up and grabbing me. I stood at a place where on a clear day, that proverbial clear day, you should be able to see 3 bodies of water. Was it the Dead Sea, the Kinneret, and the Mediterranean, I guess?
I think so, yeah.
Of course, you couldn't. It was too overcast or hazy.
Which is
But-
what Yah told Abraham, look around and look up and see all this will be I'm giving to you and your descendants. Makes sense that he would be in that spot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I stood there and stared at the mountain ranges in the valley in front of me. And I was just trying to literally drink it in. I didn't want to lose that moment. I didn't want to lose that vision. I took pictures, but I mean, David, I wanted to find a way. How do I reach out my arms and pull it all into my embrace? Because it was affecting me. And I realized this is my future. Now, I'm an American. I love America. I'm a 10th generation Virginian. My family's been in this nation for 13 generations. We go back to the Winthrop fleet back in the 1630s. We're well entrenched in this nation, in this land, and in particular in this state. But there's something about Israel. My roots go deeper into Israel than anywhere else. So I'm committed to seeing the day that Yeshua comes to reign on this earth and that we enter into that kingdom. I don't understand. I struggle with the idea of why should I bother with Israel? Maybe you can clarify that for me. I don't get it.
No, I'm with you on it. I don't understand the other than Hasatan. We have an adversary who wants us to look at everything that the Father desires for us as askew, and everything in the world is opposed to the kingdom of Yah. So it makes sense that it would happen. But why would that be among the people of Yahweh itself? It's hard. I think it's one of the things where we look at traditions and the things that we've been taught and a manner of we follow suit with where we've always known. Even reading scripture, we read it through the mindset that we're already established. And we need to learn how to see everything fresh, how to see everything new. Why should I bother with Israel? I mean, it's about the size of New Jersey. I mean, what's the big deal about this piece of land over there? Why all the fighting? Why all the conflict? Because Yahweh said that's where his people are supposed to be. That's where he said, that's where he placed his name, and that's where he
placed his name.
That's where he called us to worship. So, we're about out of time here.
Oh, man.
It just goes right through. We got about 20 seconds or so left. Do you have any final thoughts on the heart of Israel?
I heard the argument frequently, well, why should I be concerned with Yehuda when they don't believe in Messiah as we do? Their prayer's not even answered. Ephesians chapter 2, verse number 18, because through him we both those that were far off and those who are near, have access to the Father by one Spirit. Yah loves his people, all of us.
Very well said, Barry. Well, guys, listen, we want to hear from you, your questions, comments, concerns, things you'd like to hear talked about on this program. So you can contact us at reunionroadmap@bneiyosefna.com. come. So until next time, shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Here's Will Spires singing an unplugged version of his song Yah's Confederacy. This version is available at Will's YouTube channel. You can hear the studio version on his album Seeds, available at cdbaby.com.
Confederates, Yah's Confederation, traveling Mechadim, spiritual migration. We're learning how to leave what we knew and how to listen. Meha Shiloah, Meha Shiloah, counting the stars and sand, trusting his promises. This is the walk of faith, just like Abraham. Oh, Yisrael, my Iver, oh, Yaakov, whom I've chosen, descendants of Abraham. Oh, Havi, do not be frightened. Ani azartich. We too have entered in this everlasting covenant, declares Adonai. Yeah. Come to me, holy, drop your defenses. I've come to undo the lies from the truth, and to light up your darkness, to go forth in redemption. Oh, how I pursue you. From the far corners I drew your heart aside to bring down my kingdom, to bring down my kingdom. Look up into stars and space while the wheels on our car still pace. The pitch in the pavement and lines made of sand. Yeah, reminding us even here, soon one day we'll gather there. The call still goes out to the children of Abraham. Do not be frightened. Ani azartich. We too have entered in this everlasting covenant, declares Adonai. Yeah. So come to me, holy, and drop your defenses. I've come to undo the lies from the truth, and to light up your darkness, to go forth in redemption. Oh, how I pursue you. From the far corners I drew
Hello, I'm Sophania Pappas, Communications Director for B'nai Yosef North America, and with me is Al McCarn, our Executive Director. And you just listened to Yah's Confederacy by Will Spires. Now, what's very interesting with that song, you think of how does this have to do with standing with Israel? And when you listen to the song, it really has an incredible message in there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Now, Will is from South Carolina. I grew up in Alabama. You live in Georgia. Right now, I live in North Carolina. So anytime you hear that word Confederacy, we might think about the American Civil War. But no, Will is speaking something different. What is a confederacy? Well, it's a coming together of a community for a purpose. And in this case, Yah's Confederacy, well, it starts with Abraham and the seed of Abraham, which is what our Creator is doing to bind together a people for himself throughout all the earth. It's a redemptive mission.
Yes. And the fact that right now, as we're celebrating Yom HaZmaut, which is Israel's Memorial Day, or Israel's 70th anniversary, I should say, that here you're actually thinking, wow, okay, it took this nation to come together. Miraculously, in 1948, the modern Jewish nation of Israel, and coming together, forming a community in the land that was promised to them through Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. And from that connection, we are actually talking with each other right now today.
Absolutely. You know, I am firmly of the opinion that the greatest evidence of God's existence is the continued existence of the Jewish people.
Absolutely. And all the more, as we heard our elders speak about, standing with Israel has everything to do with our spiritual connection that we have to even our Messiah. It's the message is there, is to stand with Israel.
Exactly. So if the preservation and restoration of the Jewish nation is testimony to our God's existence and his willingness and ability to come through on his promises, what is the world going to say when they see the non-Jewish portion of Israel restored, the Ephraimite nation?
Oh my goodness. It's going to be an earthquake.
Yes, an earthquake. I'm thinking like the earthquake in the days of King Uzziah. Oh, that's in the Bible too.
Yes.
In fact, I think it's Zechariah 14 where that's mentioned, and it comes in the same chapter where the Messiah appears and touches down on the Mount of Olives, and it says they will mourn for him as their only son whom they pierced. And what a great day. I really do believe that the restoration of both houses of Israel and their coming together again is a necessary precursor to the Messiah's return.
Yes.
Of course, we will all be corrected in due time. So, what I have just said, if it's not quite right, that's all right. The Father will correct. But the exciting thing is, we are living in these days when his promises are coming to pass.
Yes.
Now, Naomi's story tells us that Israel is not the perfect country, not the perfect society. And she was telling us of this as she was growing up in the 50s and 60s there. Certainly a lot of the issues are still with the state of Israel. Nevertheless, God works through imperfect people and even imperfect institutions. So I think the choice before us is the same as it always has been. Do we take what God is doing now and work with it and walk through it as he calls us? Or do we sit back and wait for him to bring the perfect, which I would submit will not come unless we are involved with him in it?
Yes. Good words.
So, folks, that is our show for this special edition of Reunion Roadmap as we remember 70 years of the modern state of Israel. Sophania, thank you for all that you have contributed to the show. Thank you all for listening. And on behalf of my friend and colleague, Sophania Pappas, this is Al McCarn saying join us again next week on Reunion Roadmap.
Thank you for joining us on Reunion Roadmap, a production of B'nai Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging House of Joseph here in North America.